Hi, my name is Kim, grateful, recovering compulsive overeater. I weigh and measure off the Gray Sheet food plan. I turn into my sponsor every day at exactly what I commit. I don't eat between meals, and abstinence is by far the most important thing in my life, the reason I am alive. My abstinence date is September 22nd, 2014. And usually I feel like I know what I'm going to say, or at least I have opened up the vessel so that, I share what's needed to share, be shared for me. And there are people that have heard my story a zillion times, even though it kind of changes every day where I am now, but there are also people that haven't. So I'll just give a history and we'll see what it goes, where it goes. And again, I feel like when I speak, it's really, it's just my experiences, completely just my experiences. And it's helpful for me to always have an opportunity to see how far I've come. And when I say that, if I didn't weigh and measure off the Gray Sheet food plan, I'd be dead. It's not a joke, and even though I don't know what that death would have been like, it would have been, first the spiritual death, of course, but to imagine a life at, it's such a progressive disease where I wouldn't like get in a car accident or something running for my fix, like is just unimaginable, or choke or explode or ruin my stomach from binging on the substitute sugars, which to me was always a problem. Not always, but became a problem. But that's, again, just for me. Some people, it's a savior. So to begin, as I often begin, I don't recall having an eating disorder. I think I was one of those kids that could just take it or leave it. If something didn't taste good, I'd throw it away, which to a compulsive eater sounds crazy. Like I remember, like in my compulsive eating days, something doesn't taste good, I would just eat more of it to get rid of it, to go on to the next thing. Like that's how, I haven't had that memory in so long, but like that's how the disease works, especially if it was something that I cooked, like didn't occur to me to throw it away. But if I cooked and it was bad, I'll eat it all so that nobody else has to suffer through it, and I never even cooked that much anyway. So insanity. I mean, really, just even remembering that, like, you can't tell that to normal people and have them say, oh, yeah, I can, or what, however you define normal, but not compulsive eaters. So that's one thing. So yeah, I don't recall having a eating disorder. And then I do have memories of being 14 and my body changing and like becoming conscious that maybe I couldn't eat the same way that I had. So like, I just cut down on something. Like it was all instinctive. Like it was just not even a big deal, or going on a diet. It was like, maybe I'll have a can of this today instead of like what my family's eating, which is a big loaf of this. Like, but it wasn't even a big deal. But when I was 16 and somebody that I thought was my boyfriend, he probably didn't even know my name, triggered something. I was like, that's it. I'm not going to eat, eating it's bourgeois. And I would just be like on the train, just like disgusted with people that ate. And I lived on the Upper West Side in Manhattan, and I was in a very prestigious acting school. And really, actually, I'm only just getting in touch with this because my daughter will ask me questions. I'm like, oh, wow. Yeah. Just say, Mom, that was so cool. But anyway, and I was considered, a promising actress. And it's so hard. Like I only just recently remembered it was like 1 in 10 women that got into a conservatory after, but I just really wasn't interested. I barely even remember, I think the acting and the food and Dylan just got me through like the suffering of high school. So I was starving myself, got some positive attention at first. All these memories are coming back. Lost my period eventually, which tends to happen. And then so that went on for a while. And I was just like, I was just so like, there's just a high to being anorexic, I have to say. There's just a high. You felt such a power, and then I remember my mother they tried to send me to a food therapist, and that I don't even know why they exist. Like that's just so stupid. Like, okay, let's figure out how you can eat in moderation. Like the fact that still happens is like really kind of depressing. And there's somebody actually I've been just trying to 12-step into Grey Sheet for decades. She's just keeps getting bigger and bigger in OA, but just feels like she's recovering in some ways. And so I asked her once in a while, I'll say, come on this meeting. I'm speaking, and we're kind of like, we just connected many decades ago when I was living in Israel and kind of supported each other. And then I went to Grey Sheet and she didn't. And we know what happens. And and so I just said, oh, by the way, I'm speaking, and I always know she's going to say she's doing this or that. And she's like, no, I'm actually going to a meeting. I'm sure just regular OA, which is fine for me, it worked until it didn't. And then I'm going to therapy. And I just wanted to say, and how's that working for you? I mean, seriously, decades, and it's just sad, once in a while she'll admit how sad she is and she'll think about Grey Sheet, but it's too like, limiting. I was like, oh my God, nothing is more limiting than waking up after a binge, or spending a day like fantasizing about what I'm going to eat because the options are open, or studying menus on the street, like walking up Third Avenue or something and looking at every freaking single menu, or trying to find the right boyfriend that can afford the right kind of food that has like petite cuisine, like I would have married anybody that like could have provided me with that, And anyway, I know I'm kind of all over the place, but it really, I'm having this flood of memories. So so I starved, and I would even come home sometimes and put on like combat boots. This is when I was 16. I was like a stick and put on combat boots. And if I weighed, a little bit too much in the combat boots, like it would just be another sign that I had to keep starving. And then one day I went to an event, and next thing I knew, I cleared off the table. I just cleared, and it was somebody's sweet 16. And that's all I remember, like end to end, could not stop. And I woke up the next day, I had no idea what had happened. Like I really didn't even know I didn't even know what happened. Like after so many months of just starvation, and all of a sudden to eat all this stuff, it was like, who is that? And basically that was my life. Every day after that, binging, starving, binging, exercising. I could never throw up, but I tried, but I couldn't throw up. So there was some laxative abuse, but that mostly ended at the end of high school. And then went to college, and I don't know how I have like 2 master's degrees. I don't know how any of it happened. And again, I do want to say that, I went to Overeaters Anonymous a little bit after college, and I became abstinent. And it really, that was a transformation. That was like being born again for me. Like everything, even the relapses, everything was, I was a different person after that. OA really made sense to me when I started like giving a name to it, this was before, cell phones. This was like in the early, maybe it was like 1990 or something, walking around with change, so I can make calls. I remember I had like we were developing a small community, and it was the first time I was actually friends with like pretty girls my age. Like that's always been a thing. Like if there's a pretty girl my age, like I usually think that they're friends with me because, there's a part of me that, like I said, I don't feel this way anymore, but aspects of it, like I can relate to it. If the pretty girls were nice to me, then they were doing me a favor, or they just felt bad for me. Like I just couldn't. And so like the fact that I was like exchanging numbers with like the pretty girls in the OA room, or what I defined, just as just attractive, like just my peers, like it didn't even matter what they looked like just peers that I shared stuff with, and we turned steps over to each other. Like it was really positive. And I actually kept to that abstinence, to the abstinence that I had defined from the beginning in OA for quite a while, until a few master's degrees and decades later, I wound up in Israel. And that's when I really started to relapse. And that was again when the binging, it was like the first time I think that there was just uncontrollable eating. And I just wanted to kill myself. In fact, I checked into a hotel and was going to, and a friend like pulled me out. And there had been some suicide attempts in my life, but small attempts. I just always felt like, I would rather die than just like freaking binge again. So I was in Israel, and then I discovered how, which I had never even heard of, all those decades of OA in New York, never heard of how. And then eventually, after having a baby and then binging still, how started to make sense because I knew somebody, and that was great also until it didn't work anymore. And I'm not sure that it didn't work. And I've said this, and I've just recently come to the realization, I'm not sure why how it didn't work. I'm not sure that if it was the carbs or not the carbs, I don't know what, but I do know that having a food plan where there's with exception, for me, that was the killer. With exception, you don't have to weigh and measure in the, just seeing what other people in my small how group were doing. Like, I was like, that's really abstinent. Like, forget having different lines, like just everybody had their own interpretation, and it was just really, it was just almost scary watching people like saying they were abstinent and how, and they were in that they were weighing and measuring with exception. And then I moved to the West Coast, and I found GreySheet because it was on the OA list. And I was going to GreySheet for a while only because it was the only meeting I could really attend because of my schedule. And I never thought about the food plan. I was like, maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't. Like, I don't even know what I was doing, but I was going to the meetings and enjoying them. And the people were really nice and all had the glow, but it like didn't occur to me that I was going to actually like go on this food plan or like say the mantra. I didn't even get what the mantra was. And then I heard somebody qualify with a story that was similar to mine, just like binging and starving, more on the anorexic side. And she really bottomed out on the substitute sugars, which is what was happening to me at the time. Like boatloads of substitute sugar. That was like, eventually I would just like eat whatever was around as long as it was like kosher pescatarian, which is what I like. I kept those boundaries. But the other thing was, I just couldn't stop with that. And when I got off of it and started reading what it was probably doing to my body, that's just another sign that I would have died without GreySheet. And I never had to count day one again. Like that was 8.5 years ago or something. And there's never a day that I regret being on the GreySheet food plan. Never a day that I feel, oh, I wish I could just eat like normal people. Never a day like, because I have a kind of public life in some ways. I'm a fundraiser. So, the drag is definitely sometimes when there's like parties after that I'm supposed to go to and everybody's noshing and talking about what they're noshing on and drinking. Like, it's more just like, okay, I get bored, eventually. And that's kind of the hard thing. And I just want to come home and have my dinner. But aside from that, there's never like, oh, that's making that person uncomfortable. Like, thank God I've just never had that. Like, my thing is like, if you want my company, then you're just going to have to deal with that. I'm eating out of Tupperware right now, or I can die and you can deal with that, like not putting that on them, but just like, these are the things. Either I'm going to be eating out of this Tupperware right now in this fancy restaurant because they gave me permission, even if it's embarrassing to you, or I'm either going to go home and eat out of a plate, or I'll binge. And like it's just limited. And I don't live in that, like, what if, or this is a drag, and when I first started, I'm also somebody, after 8.5 years, I've never eaten in a restaurant. Except for the food that I've prepared. And I think it's great that people do. I just, A, love my cooking, and B, I feel like I just spent so much of my life, like in the anorexic world, of just like dealing with waiters and cooks and making sure it didn't have this or that. And I just don't want to have those conversations. Like, I just don't feel confident that I would really be present. And maybe one day that I'll be proved, maybe one day I'll want to do it. Right now I have no urge. So, there are times that I've had to go to conferences, on the other side of the country. And I packed, like at the beginning of recovery, like really packed huge, like 3 meals a day. Some of the meals have a few courses the way that I eat them, and just got the biggest thing that I knew wouldn't explode on the plane. And that was it. Like, just spent basically a week cooking and packing. And that's what I did. And my food was just yummy and stayed yummy. And I just feel blessed. I don't know if I said anything about anything other than this is my story. And there's always more to tell. You know, I raised a kid. Thank you, Kanye. I've raised a kid in abstinence. She's now 15. She knows what I do. She doesn't doubt it ever, although she does have a fantasy when she turns 21, we'll have a drink together. I was like, no, I don't think so. I mean, she doesn't drink now, and I don't think she'll drink then either. She's just that kind of person. But she's got issues. But that's it. So thank you everybody for giving me my abstinence, and I look forward to hearing all of you.